Hi everyone, welcome back to Visually Hidden Selects. I'm Peter O'Brien, and today I'd like to talk to you about On the Waterfront from 1954. Directed by Elia Kazan and starring Marlon Brando, Rod Steiger, Lee J. Cobb, Karl Malden, and Eva Marie Saint in her first film role. The film was written by Bud Schulberg, who based it on a series of 24 articles written by Malcolm Johnson entitled Crime on the Waterfront. The film was shot on location in Hoboken, New Jersey, which was not common practice at the time. It really was unique to go to a location and film there, and in the case of this particular film, the location and the setting, it's in the title, On the Waterfront, and so you really can't phone that in. You can't build it on a soundstage or a set, and it just adds a real authenticity to the story, to the characters, and to the setting. Even the extras were actual longshoremen that the film employed to just add another layer of believability to the production. The film begins with Terry Malloy, played by Marlon Brando. He approaches one of his neighbors, Joey Doyle, and he thinks he's just kind of setting him up for a talking to. Maybe he's going to get roughed up a little bit, and Joey winds up taking a head dive off of one of the buildings. From that moment on, Terry is in conflict, struggling with responsibility, not only for the death of Joey Doyle, but also because of his obligations to his brother, who is basically the accountant for the main antagonist, John Friendly. Marlon Brando was the first and only choice for the film. He had previously worked with Elia Kazan on A Streetcar Named Desire. He's credited with bringing a whole new approach to the field of acting. He was a very early practitioner of method acting, which is when you get into character and you stay in character and you stay in the moment of the character. You don't break, and there's improvisation involved, and that comes through in this film. The scene in the park where Edie drops her glove and Brando picks it up and he just starts kind of cleaning it up for her, and that's not a part of the script. That's just something that Brando did as an actor, being in the moment of a character. And then he goes so far as to slip the glove on his hand. Again, it's a girl's glove, and here's this boxer who wears gloves, but this is a different kind of glove. And then again, that just ties into the theme of his tenderness and his connection with Edie. So there's a lot to be read in to even the smallest motivations of the characters and their decisions in this film. When they first approached Marlon Brando about the film, they sent him the script and he straight up refused it, sent the script back. They kind of went back and forth a little bit, and then they started using some psychological tactics. And they offered the role of Terry Malloy to Frank Sinatra, who was very excited to play the role. They also suggested to Brando that a new up-and-coming actor named Paul Newman would be taking the role, and with that enticing, Brando came around and he accepted the role of Terry Malloy. Because the film was shot on location in Hoboken, they just had access to this great pool of New York theater actors, trained actors, who didn't live in Hollywood, and they just brought something extra to their part. Martin Balsam plays one of the detectives investigating the crimes on the docks. Pat Hingle is the bartender, and Fred Gwynne plays one of the thugs named Slim, and he of course went on to play Herman Munster. Terry Malloy as a protagonist is really a pretty fantastic character study. His arc is riddled with conflict. I would say that in the beginning of the film, I think he's just naive, and part of that is wrapped into his relationship with his brother, whose relationship is wrapped into John Friendly's. And through the course of the film, and specifically through his relationship with Edie, Joey Doyle's sister, Terry ultimately comes around and starts to realize the effects of his actions and works towards making amends. The film has a lot of themes, the Catholic faith being one of them in the representation of Karl Malden's character, Father Barry. He's present throughout the film from the very beginning through to the very end, and he's almost like a guide for Terry specifically. And throughout the course of the film, Karl Malden has a number of fantastic scenes, one specifically in the hold of a ship, and he just kind of gets on his soapbox and calls out everybody in earshot for the events that are driving this story. This film is famous for one specific scene which takes place in the back of a taxi between Marlon Brando and Rod Steiger. And everybody always praises Brando for that scene. However, a lot of acting is reacting, and so in that regard, the two actors playing off of each other in that scene, I think, is what makes it work. It isn't the Brando show, as a lot of people would like you to believe. Rod Steiger is doing just as much in that scene as Marlon Brando. It just so happens that Marlon Brando's character is going through a lot, and that's kind of his turning point where his eyes are finally being opened up to the situation. And if Rod Steiger wasn't there to give that to Brando, I don't think you would have gotten the same reaction in that scene. If I had to pick a favorite scene, I don't know that I could, but I do have a set that are pretty in tandem. I really like the scenes between Brando and Eva Marie Saint. There's the first scene where they really kind of get to know each other and they're walking through the park and Terry is sort of not flirting and not putting the moves on her, not picking her up, but he's just trying to get to know her. And so there's just a lot of endearingness that comes out of his character in that scene where you really get to see that he isn't a thug and he isn't a brute and he isn't just a meathead. There's a tenderness that's revealed about his character that leads him down the path of his arc and in his turning point. There's another scene much later in the film where Terry confesses to Edie his responsibility in the death of her brother Joey. And the thing I love about that scene is that a lot of the dialogue is hidden behind the sounds of the waterfront. There's steam whistles, there's birds, there's machinery going on, there's all different kinds of noises, but you get to see Terry delivering the news and you get to see Edie's reaction to the news. And it's just so well played because in that instance, the words aren't important. It's what's coming through on the characters' faces. You know, they usually say like a film needs to have like 5 really good scenes and then the rest is just connecting those dots. And I feel like that scene with Terry and Edie in the park, the scene with Father Barry in the ship, the scene in the back of the taxi cab, and then the scene where Terry confesses to Edie are 4 out of those 5 dots, the 5th one being the climax of the film, and you're just gonna have to watch it to find out. The legacy of this film, it's very influential in a number of different films throughout the years, very specifically in the film Rocky. You could almost say that the character of Rocky Balboa is a cinematic cousin to Terry Molloy. They both have a history as being a fighter, they both do kind of shady operations on the docks and the waterfront, and they're both underdogs in their respective stories. There is so much greatness packed into this film. It's almost too much to take in during one viewing. This film won 8 Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Supporting Actress, Best Screenplay. It pretty much took home just about everything, except for Best Supporting Actor, unfortunately. 3 of the actors in this film, Rod Steiger, Lee J. Cobb, and Karl Malden, were all nominated for Best Supporting Actor, and none of them took home the Oscar that year. But there's great performances by the entire cast. Again, it's not something you can take in just one viewing. Just go watch the movie. Just do that. Like, whatever you're gonna do tonight, cancel it and watch this. Even the music, which it was composed by Leonard Bernstein, right from the get-go, the music has an energy to it. There's a lot of driving, percussive moments, but then there are some very, very tender moments within the score as well. And again, it just adds to that overall big picture sense where everything comes together to just make something that is undeniably fantastic. And the fact that it was filmed on location, there's a sense of realism in this particular film where it's almost like you're watching a documentary. Even the dialogue has a very snappy, streetwise sense about it. And there are some lines in here that Brando just whips out at the characters. Don't just watch this film because it's a classic and you're trying to scratch it off your to-do list. You should watch this film because it's a good story and it's told well, and it's firing on all cylinders from start to finish. So that's it for On the Waterfront. Again, I hope you enjoy this recommendation, and if you do get a chance to check it out, be sure to tune in to the Visually Hidden podcast, where we will be discussing this film at length. Until next time, see ya!